And here we are today at the Walters Art Museum in Baltimore, Maryland. This ibex-shaped stand most likely served as a support for an offering bowl that rested in the upper ring. The ibex is a type of wild goat and was a favorite subject in Iranian art for thousands of years. Although it resembles earlier pieces from central Mesopotamia and northwestern Iran, the advanced characteristic of the bronze casting technique of the stand suggests a date earlier in the first millennium BC. The Sumerian people developed their own belief system and had a variety of gods and goddesses whom they worshipped. They developed religious practices such as making offerings to please the deities or regain their favor. And here we are at the wing of Egyptian art. Here we have a coffin box set that belonged to an upper middle class woman by the name of Nesit Iset. As you can see, there is a lot of paintings and inscriptions on this coffin that were not for just the mortal eye, but to represent the afterlife. Ancient Egyptian art was both highly stylized and symbolic. Much of the surviving art comes from tombs and monuments, and there is emphasis on life after death and the preservation of knowledge from the past. This sculpture of Aphrodite is from the late classical period of Greek art. This is about 4th century AD. You can see the extreme detail in the nude female body. You can clearly see that there is focus on the female sensuality and sexuality in the sculpture. You can see on her right thigh evidence of where her fingers attached to her thigh, showing that although this is a nude sculpture to represent the beauty and curvature of the human body, there is still modesty in this image. The sculpture represents the late classical Greek art because you can see movement in Aphrodite. The line in her stomach shows that she is slightly bent over and the legs are at different heights. The left leg is in front of the right leg slightly, which also means that the right knee is at a different height. This shows great contrapposto. You can clearly see there is emphasis on the beauty and divinity of the female body in the picture. This is what late classical Greek art was all about, representing the human body in its most naturalistic form. This piece of Roman art is from the Augustan period, which was 27 BC to 14 AD. This is a portrait of Augustus's head, but is stylized to the previous ideals from the Greek art. Augustus is presented in a youthful and smooth appearance to make him seem larger than life and godlike. Roman art was much like Greek art. However, Roman art is a combination of different cultures because Rome was a melting pot. There are many different types of Roman art because of the huge span throughout history that Roman art was being made. Republic Rome focused more on the ideologies of wisdom of the elderly, and this came across in their art. When there was a shift from the Roman Republic to the Roman Empire under Augustus, there was also a shift in art. The art now turned more youthful and focused on the beauty of the human body. Here we see Augustus portrayed in a youthful, powerful form that represents the classical period of Greek art. We see this a lot in the imperialistic age of Rome. They turned back to the previous art of classical Greece. This miniature once formed part of a psalter, where it faced the beginning of Psalm 77, which, in Byzantine usage, opened the second half of the Psalms. The Psalter represents a complex mixture of classical pagan past and the medieval present. This stained glass window panel is French and is from Paris. It dates back to about 1245 AD and pictures Saint Vincent being martyred for his Christian faith. Saint Vincent is showing being torn apart by iron combs and being tied up. He is completely calm while dying for his faith. We know this is from the medieval period. To be specific, it is Gothic art. During the Gothic period, there was a greater influence on creating stained glass windows within the church. During the Romanesque period, churches had to be constructed with a limited number of windows because the architecture was not equipped to put in the windows. Even where they were able to put in a window, it had to be very small. If too many windows were put in the structure, it had a risk for collapsing. In the Gothic period, there was a shift in how churches were built architecturally. In the Gothic period, they made arches pointed at the top to relieve some of this stress on the structural elements. With less stress, the columns were more slender, which allowed more room for large windows to be put in. And that concludes our tour. Thank you for joining us.